What is up, Watch fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Watch Shop.
And I'm Anna. I make content for the channel.
I basically find all the watches and she records them so you guys can kind of enjoy watch porn. And that's what we're doing today.
Exactly. Porn.
Before porn. What's wrong with you? Before anything else, right? Before business owner, before anything, before media, before any of this, I'm a watch geek, right? I love my role as the curator in the T&H Watch Shop. That's why I identify as the curator, even though it's only one of my hats here. That's the hat that I just find so incredibly rewarding. It's the biggest hat. I love to be able to sift through Rolex history, sift through Patek, modern. Where can I find value? Where is there interest? Where is something maybe overpriced? Right? Where are there markets that are becoming kind of scary? Right? Naturally, in doing this, I'm able to learn a ton about history, learn a ton about brands, why they do what they do, gain a better holistic understanding of brands, right? How did Tudor go from the Submariner to this odd yellow 1990s chronograph, like automatic chrono? Kind of weird how this all happens. Things like, why does a Rolex Day just have a Tiffany signature on it? Why does that even happen? Rolex's new release of the Pepsi GMT has blown up the world, but what happened to those models in the early 2000s? Are they still interesting? Heuer, we'll get into all of this, but see, I'm already excited. This stuff is so endlessly interesting. We could study it for the rest of our lives and still die very ignorant relative to all the information out there. But I like this series, which we do every couple of weeks, because it gives us the opportunity to, jump in and share some of the information that we've picked up along the way. Whether that's about a $900 watch or a $30,000 watch, we can give sometimes even more time to the $900 watch. We can give our 2 minutes a piece, or 3 minutes a piece, or 5 minutes, and see how we feel about them. Boom, watch fam.
What are you wearing on your wrist?
I am wearing my Cartier Tank American today, but I guess I'll take that off because now we'll start wearing these.
I'm not wearing a watch for the purpose of picking a watch.
What would you like to talk about first, Anna?
I really, really, really love this Heuer Carrera.
Yep.
And it's one that has we have sold a couple like this, not that many, but a few, I think, right?
Well, like those.
Similar.
Yeah.
I love this style. I think vintage Heuer is really cool, really unique, and I think that because of the way that the balance on the dial is kind of subtle and soft, and the dimensions are pretty conservative, I think it looks great on men and women for smaller and larger wrists, and it's timeless. So I love this watch.
This watch brings up two interesting conversations. One, the vintage Heuer market in general. Heuer is one of the most collectible brands outside of Rolex and Patek. That's for a lot of reasons. One being within their class, meaning producers of sports watches. They really did not just produce some of the best, meaning they weren't cutting corners. They were using steel cases. They were using great movements. They had truly beautiful, and not just beautiful, but complex dials. They were also important in culture. So many people, Steve McQueen most notably, wore Heuer. So it's become a kind of cultural icon. This particular example is not just all original, but it's really, really rare. I would put this on the kind of really, really, really toward the top of collectible Heuer. And while they're collectible watches, the prices don't necessarily represent that or reflect that. You're talking about, like 10 grand, $11,000 for some of these collectible Heuers. They go into the hundreds as well, hundreds of thousands. But I would say that this is probably within the 90th percentile, which is kind of crazy.
Yep. So it's signed by Fisher. Who is Fisher?
Yeah, it's a regular, Heuer Carrera 3-register, but this watch was one of the pieces from the batch that Fisher, which was a scientific laboratory, ordered from Heuer. So they stamped the name. It's it's the equivalent of signing MetLife, except it's just kind of cooler.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll pick one now.
Pick one.
I love this day date. This is a reference 18038. So it's a quick set day date. I was talking about this not too long ago. First of all, look how thick the case is. It's a really, really nice condition piece. Brown vignette dial, diamond indices. You know, what's interesting about this watch, speaking, you know, kind of going forward with this idea of really collectible watches that aren't necessarily very expensive. The Rolex market is really interesting, and I like to look at it from, you know, the different models, right? So the Daytonas are incredibly valuable watches at the moment. Average Daytonas, meaning nothing particularly special about them, watches that were mass-produced, watches that are in good condition, not new old stock, watches that don't have necessarily any super small details that make a big difference, are trading north of $70,000. So the average vintage Daytona is north of 70, right? With GMTs, the best GMTs are below 100. Right, whereas the best Daytonas are on the, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions, you know, right? So the Daytona leads, the GMT is behind, the Submariner is up there with the Daytona, and yet there are icons like the Datejust and the Day Date that have obviously a scale, right, of incredible quality, rare pieces, things that really were hardly ever produced, down to normal pieces as well, normal pieces that are more approachable. In the Day Date world, you're talking about, you know, a normal Day Date head only would be somewhere in like the $7,000 or $8,000 range for like a vintage 1803. And they go up, but they max out at 70, and that is on a very rare occasion where there's a Stella dial. This Day Date, which is quite rare and the condition is really great, is not a top tier Day Date, meaning it's not the rarest of the rare, but it's certainly a, you know, second tier Day Date, which is miles above what we're used to seeing. When you hear second tier, you're like, oh, it's not that great, it's second tier. No, I'm talking, when I say second tier, I'm talking about like nearly the best of the best. And these watches, which came in red, blue, brown, believe that's it. They, you know, they're below 15 grand head only, which is crazy to me. Objectively, it's rare. I think it's beautiful, and it's just hysterical to me that, you know, not all really rare Rolexes are necessarily very expensive. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, so speaking of stamped and rare Rolex, let's talk about this Tiffany Datejust we've got here. So, well, we've seen Tiffany stamps on Rolexes before, but how rare is this, you know, in general on a Datejust? Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of Tiffany stamped, you know, Rolexes because they get the most press, right? They're some of the most desirable Rolexes kind of ever, right? Tiffany stamped Rolexes, meaning for quite a few decades, Rolex had a partnership with Tiffany, just the same way they had a partnership with Superco, Lino, but they had the relationship with these retailers, and they would allot them a certain amount of watches, Datejust, GMTs, Submariners every year, and those watches would be co-stamped with the retailer. Patek Philippe did it with Tiffany as well. Patek Philippe did it with Golby Milano. Patek Philippe did it with all these other places. Bayer. Anyway, Tiffany & Co. is certainly at the top. So we see them a lot, but that's only because when one comes up, everyone's talking about it.
Right.
This is a reference 1601 Datejust, which is certainly my favorite reference, you know, in Rolex, dollar for dollar. Proportions are perfect, dials clean and beautiful, custard trim, the whole bit.
Yeah, beautiful.
But to have that little extra Tiffany stamp is crazy. In the Datejust world, the Tiffany stamp only carries, you know, a couple $1,000 premium, whereas if you're talking about a GMT, a Tiffany stamp could carry, you know, tens upon tens of thousands of dollars, carry $100,000 premium, depending on the reference. Same thing with Daytona. You know, a Tiffany stamp on a Daytona could carry, you know, dozens of thousands of dollars in premium and more. But with a Datejust, just because it's not as popular of a watch, the premium is fairly small.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So I love it.
Do you know how many of these exist?
No, no one would really know. It's almost impossible, but they're quite rare. At any given moment, you'd have a hard time finding more than, you know, a dozen or 2 dozen Tiffany Rolexes on the market. Of course, many more than that exist, but they're rare watches, highly collectible. When people buy them, they keep them. They're worth it. Yeah. Speaking of the GMT, this is a beautiful one. I believe it's from like 2005, 2007, something like that. I have to check the exact year. But it's minty. It's really good condition.
Yeah, it's in incredible condition.
Have you grown to enjoy the GMT more lately?
Oh yeah, well, I've seen a lot lately.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't know, I guess, the variation you can find simply just because of aging and the little differences in features of the references, because I've kind of really only seen your dad's GMT for so many years.
Which is the same reference as this. My dad's just faded out.
It's, oh my god, that's actually really funny.
It's the same watch.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Isn't that wild?
But I think that something that's really unique about the GMT and what makes it so fun about owning one is that there are so many components that have the capability of changing. You know, there's a couple colors, and even if there's tritium on older models, I think that it's just really fun. We have a gilt GMT,
in the shop,
which is incredibly beautiful.
It's really awesome.
And so yeah, GMTs are really fun. They're uniquely beautiful, and they're really timeless.
For me, it's better than the Submariner. Obviously more complicated.
Yeah.
I think that the origin story of the GMT is more interesting than that of the Submariner. The origin story of the GMT, I think it was 1954, Pan Am kind of like connected with Rolex and said, hey, transcontinental pilots need a tool, a watch, to change their time zones more readily. And that's how Rolex developed the Greenwich Mean Time complication.
Yeah.
Very cool. You know, and the blue and red is iconic. It's definitely worth owning in black. It's definitely worth owning the Batman. All those watches are great. But for me, the Pepsi is the way to go.
Yeah. So this is a GMT. What is this we have from Patek Philippe?
This is a Patek Philippe World Time reference 5110 in white gold, 5110 I suppose. Beautiful sapphire case back. Patek Philippe has been making world timers for much of their existence. Some of Patek Philippe's most collectible watches ever are world timers, and I think that this particular reference, which in my opinion fits perfectly, I think it's a super modern sizing, is way undervalued. You're talking about a very highly collectible white metal, precious metal Patek, under 30 grand, well under 30 grand. That's amazing to me. You know, I think that there are a lot of people out there that are, you know, especially in today's market, people are spending in the 20s on steel Rolexes, new steel Rolexes. There are people that are interested in getting more into the complicated side of horology. It's just very, you know, it's very expensive. So watches like this, while of course still collected and owned and appreciated by veteran collectors, they're great segues into this super complicated world. The odds are a normal person is not going to walk into Patek after just owning a GMT and going to go to Patek and say, hey, I'd like to buy a world time. They're going to pay 60 grand or 50 grand. Probably not going to happen. It's just it's just an astronomical number. But under 30, it's not approachable. Certainly not to most people. But within the relative world of watches, it is approachable. There are watches that are a fraction of the value and complication, or a fraction of the importance, that are double the price, triple the price. So I think it's a wonderful watch.
Yeah, and I think that there's a clear, like, okay, this is a step into serious luxury, because not only are you getting a movement that somehow like fit into a pretty small
23 time zones simultaneously.
That's insane.
Simultaneously.
And it fits in a conservatively sized case, and so that's beautifully done. But the dial here and the finishing is absolutely breathtaking. So I think you really are like, oh, like I think if I didn't know anything about watches and I saw it, you're like, oh wow, that's really nice. That's a luxury watch.
I think that most people would have, if I asked them to guess what that watch cost, they would guess well over, you know, the under 30. I think it's like $27,000. The under 30 that it does, it just packs so much more of a wallop. Great. What? Why are you laughing? Packs a wallop. That's an expression. When I was growing up in
so much more of a wallop.
When I was growing up in 1930s, you know, Manhattan with my paperboy cap. When I say the President watch, what do you think?
The Rolex Day Date.
The Rolex Day Date. Exactly right. It's the president. It's the presidential watch. Really, the Vulcain Cricket was the first president's watch, which is funny. Not George Washington. I mean, this was the first watch that was associated with presidents. I believe it was owned by Eisenhower. It was owned by Johnson.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did not know that. The
Vulcain Cricket has technically speaking, I believe that every president since has been given one. That doesn't really count. They could just send a watch. But the point is, the Vulcain Cricket was like the original, you know, watch that was associated with the man that led the free world. Very, very cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. The watches, even the modern ones are okay, but the vintage ones are the way to go.
Yeah.
This one has a beautiful black gloss dial, and the alarm sounds really wonderful. I will show it to you. Isn't that great?
Yeah. The thing that's cool about alarm watches is whenever I talk to, you know, people who aren't super into watches, I explain a chronograph. Oh, okay, cool, whatever. Date, day. Oh, do you look at that? Okay. But people who I tell about alarm watches, they're like, oh, really? Like, that's cool. It has an alarm function. Like, it's this totally, like, insane thing.
I would love one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really cool, and it's actually, this may be the one thing that you actually potentially would use every day.
Absolutely. I mean,
the date every day.
Yeah, in any function, I can't even imagine. I mean, when I have to leave to go to go to a meeting, or when I have to do, it's a very functional thing. It's a little loud, can be a little obnoxious, but if you appreciate it, you just smile. Like, you appreciate, like, oh, my thing, like, it went off. Like, guys, it works. Watches work. Yeah. So I love it. The alarm complication was extremely difficult to develop. Vulcain invented it. They perfected it. Yeah, it was very, very difficult. It just wasn't loud enough. I mean, they could make some sort of a rattling. Brands could do that. Yeah. But Vulcain was the first one to say, let's actually make this loud. I think the origin story of the name. One of the people in the development of the movement basically said the big hurdle was how do you make something so small make so much noise? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, if a cricket can do it, a watch can. And the Vulcain cricket was born.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Me too. Boom.
Yeah, boom.
So this is a Tudor Tiger. Tudor Tiger was released, basically Tiger Woods was like the big brand representative at the time for this particular model. That's what's called the Tudor Tiger. I like this watch.
I actually didn't know that, because it's the Lion then. Isn't there a Lion?
The Air Lion, that was from years ago. That was before Rolex made the Air King. It was all happening at the same time.
See, it was just a bit of a coincidence, and so I didn't know that Tiger Woods was the inspiration.
Yeah. This is a pretty rare example in yellow. The Tudor Big Blocks, which predate this model, have become extremely collectible, prices going over $6,000, $7,000, even more depending on condition. They've set a precedent for Tudor now. Tudor chronographs are very, very undervalued. When you can't get a Daytona at this point for less than 20 grand almost in so many circumstances, you know, and then you've got these Tudor watches, which are the only criticism you can really give these watches is they are, you know, larger than the Daytona. If that's a problem for you, then that's a problem, certainly. But even on my wrist, which is 7 inches, the watch fits super well. Yeah. And I'm the first person to say, geez, that's too big. So great watch. I'm a big fan. Again, I like watches that are just kind of fun sometimes. Like, it doesn't have to be so serious. This morning I went for a walk and I wore my little Swatch. Like, it was a blast. I had fun with it. You know, so I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think that the bezel being so thin is cool. It looks distinct from like a GMT or a sub or whatever you know you would compare it to. And then I mean obviously the color, but
and it comes obviously look at all the Rolex. I mean obviously the Oyster case with the Oyster bracelet. Yeah. You have a super well made clasp and everything. I think it's a wonderful watch.
Like a play watch, but like serious.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like you get to a certain point when you're collecting, you just kind of want to have fun, and not everything needs to be so serious.
Totally.
And for $4,000 or whatever, you can have a blast with a great watch.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm not saying like go to Target necessarily and buy a colorful watch, but there are great watches that are, I guess they don't take themselves so seriously, and that's kind of what I like.
Yeah, exactly. So actually we have another chronograph, and it's 24 hours.
Yep, exactly right. I like 24-hour chronographs. This watch dates to the 1960s. Obviously the movement is made specifically so the hour hand obviously only makes one full revolution a day. I think it's great. Obviously it throws your eye off because right now it looks like it's 3 o'clock conventionally, but really it's 5:30. You know, so that's very interesting. They've reissued this watch in the last couple of years. Not nearly as good as the originals. I love this. The condition is superb. The dial is immaculate. Obviously all original lume and everything like that. I'm a big fan of this watch.
Yeah, I think it's super cool, and it's really well balanced for having 24 hours and markers.
Chronographs are at this point some of the most collectible genre of watches, vintage watches out there, and being able to find one that is peculiar, that is still somewhat affordable, is extremely difficult.
Yeah, completely.
But here it is. So that is some of what is in the Theo and Harris Watch Shop. Again, first and foremost, before anything to do with business, I am a huge watch geek. Doing this, being able to kind of sift through this stuff is such a pleasure to me. I enjoy it so much. It's what I choose to do in my spare time. So to be able to sit here and teach you guys a little bit about this and start conversation is such a pleasure for me. So thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for sitting down and helping me.
Absolutely. And if you guys like this video, want to see more of them, like it, subscribe to the channel, and let us know if you liked it in the comments.
And of course, all of these watches are currently available in the Theo and Harris Watch Shop for you to enjoy. So whether you'd like to just head on over and look at some watch porn, some more watch porn, and I took the photos, or pick up something for yourself, just shoot me an email at info@theoandharris.com, and we're happy to help. We have the Rover, a rich green calf in Saffiano finish, lined in the same gorgeous camel as the Rain.